Okay, picture this. It's almost 2 a.m. in Cairo, back in 1923. In a hotel room, a wealthy British lord is in bed, burning up with fever. He takes one last breath, and at that exact moment, the entire city of Cairo is plunged into total darkness. At the same time, thousands of miles away back in England, his dog lets out a howl and then just drops dead. Now, this wasn't just some random tragic death. Nope. This was the start of a legend, the story of the most famous curse in all of history.
So, where did it all begin? Well, it kicked off in November of 1922. That's when the archaeologist Howard Carter broke the seal on a tomb that had been hidden for 3,000 years. But then, just 5 months later, the guy who was funding the whole operation was dead, and suddenly, the entire world was asking this one terrifying question: did they just unleash a pharaoh's curse? And what really poured gasoline on this fire was this chilling inscription. It was supposedly found on a clay tablet right at the tomb's entrance. You better believe newspapers all over the globe printed these exact words. And just like that, a legend was born. This phrase, it became the curse's calling card.
The whole story really hinges on the death of this one guy, Lord Carnarvon. He was the aristocratic financier, the money behind the whole expedition. And his death wasn't just bad timing, it was almost bizarrely theatrical.
I mean, the coincidences surrounding his death were just almost too wild to believe. First off, the cause of death was an infected mosquito bite on his cheek. Then you have a citywide blackout that even the electric company couldn't explain. And to top it all off, his favorite dog, Susie, dies back on his estate in England. It just seemed way too perfect, too choreographed to be just a coincidence.
To really get what's going on with the curse, though, we have to rewind a little bit, back to the discovery itself. This was a moment that literally changed archaeology forever. So let's take a look at how Howard Carter even found this lost king in the first place.
You see, Howard Carter had been digging around in Egypt's Valley of the Kings for years. His sponsor, Lord Carnarvon, was just about to pull the plug on the funding after so many dead ends. This was basically Carter's last chance. And then, on November 4th, 1922, his team found it. A single step cut into the rock, buried under the sand. That step led to a staircase, and at the very bottom was a sealed door, and on it, the royal seal of a pharaoh named Tutankhamun.
And this brings us to one of the most legendary exchanges in history. On November 26th, Carter punched a small hole in that door, held up a candle, and peered into the darkness. Lord Carnarvon was standing right behind him, just buzzing with anticipation, and he asked, "Can you see anything?" Carter's response has become iconic. Yes, wonderful things. He was the first human being in 3,000 years to see the pharaoh's treasures.
And wonderful doesn't even begin to cover it. We're talking 5,398 items, all of them perfectly preserved. A solid gold death mask, a dagger literally made from a meteorite, golden chariots. Everything was exactly as it had been left. This was the first time ever in modern history that a completely intact royal pharaoh's tomb had been found. It was, without a doubt, the greatest archaeological find of all time.
But even before Carnarvon died, things were a little weird. Carter had this pet canary, for good luck. Well, shortly after they opened the tomb, a cobra, which is the symbol of the pharaohs, the one they wear on their crowns, slithered into Carter's house and ate the bird. His local Egyptian crew took it as a terrible omen. The pharaoh's serpent was already getting its revenge.
So after Lord Carnarvon died, the media just went into a frenzy. And pretty soon, every single death that was even vaguely connected to the expedition was being blamed on the curse. It created this domino effect of terror that just completely captivated the public. And the list of so-called victims just kept growing. George J. Gould, an American financier, visited the tomb and died of a fever the very next day. Lord Carnarvon's own half-brother, Aubrey Herbert, was dead within 6 months. The curse even seemed to reach across generations. When Carter's secretary, Richard Bethel, died, his father, Lord Westbury, took his own life. With every new death, the story got bigger. And even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the guy who created Sherlock Holmes, said he believed the curse was real.
By 1929, just 7 years after the discovery, the newspapers had tallied up a shocking 22 deaths connected to that tomb. 13 of those people had actually been at the original opening. The curse of King Tut wasn't just some spooky theory anymore, it was front-page news. And then came what seemed like the story's big climax. Doctors were performing an autopsy on Tutankhamun's mummy when they found a small lesion on his left cheek. And wouldn't you know it, it was in the exact same spot as the infected mosquito bite that had killed Lord Carnarvon. For a lot of people, that was it. That was the final, undeniable proof, a 3,000-year-old mark of death. So, what do we have here? A trail of bodies, a ton of bizarre coincidences, an ancient warning? It's a really compelling story, right? But is it true? Or could there be a much more rational explanation for all of this?
All right, it's time to put on our detective hats and start separating the cold, hard facts from all the fiction that the newspapers were so happy to sell.
Okay, let's break this down piece by piece. That famous curse inscription? It never existed. Not on a tablet, not on a wall, not anywhere. The whole story was just made up by a journalist to sell more papers. The Cairo blackout? Pure coincidence. Power outages happened all the time back then. And the dog? Well, Carnarvon died at 1:55 a.m. Cairo time. That's just before midnight in England. His dog died hours later. So, not exactly the supernatural psychic link everyone reported.
You know, science also offers a pretty interesting explanation. Ancient tombs can be a breeding ground for some nasty mold spores, like the stuff called Aspergillus niger. If you breathe that in, it can cause some really severe respiratory infections, especially if your immune system is already weak. So that could easily explain some of the deaths that were blamed on fever. No Pharaoh's curse needed.
But really, the most damning piece of evidence against the curse comes from a study done back in 2002. Researchers tracked the lives of the 25 people who were actually there when the tomb was opened. And what did they find? Their average age at death was 73. That's no different, statistically speaking, from people who were never anywhere near the tomb. It looks like the curse had absolutely no effect on how long they lived.
And that brings us to what is probably the final nail in the coffin for this whole curse theory. The people who should have been its #1 targets, but somehow weren't.
Let's look at who the curse missed. Lord Carnarvon's own daughter, Lady Evelyn, was one of the very first people inside that tomb. She lived to be 78. Dr. Derry, the guy who actually performed the autopsy on Tutankhamun himself, he lived to be 87. But the biggest target of them all, the man who led the entire expedition, was Howard Carter.
Think about it. If this curse was real, Howard Carter should have been the first to go, right? He's the one who really disturbed the Pharaohs' peace. And yet, he lived for another 16 years, finally dying in 1939 from cancer at the age of 64. He literally outlasted the myth that he helped create.
For the rest of his life, Carter was just hounded by reporters asking him about the curse. His answer was always simple, it was always direct, and it was always profoundly true. He'd just say, "I am still alive."
But here's a final, really fascinating twist to this whole story. The ancient Egyptians didn't really believe in curses that could kill you from beyond the grave. What they did believe, though, was that a person's soul lives on as long as their name is remembered and spoken aloud. And after Tutankhamun died, his successors basically erased his name from all the records. For 3,000 years, he was completely forgotten. So maybe the real story isn't about a curse that brought death to a few people, but about a discovery that brought a new kind of life to a forgotten king. Because of Howard Carter, the name Tutankhamun is now one of the most famous names in all of history. So in a way, through this amazing discovery, maybe it's the boy king himself who gets the last word and can finally say, "I am still alive."